Hello and welcome to the CEO Shows here at the CEO Magazine in beautiful Austin, Texas. Recently, we had an absolutely marvelous conversation for our e-summit on viral marketing that I want to share with you. Our guest in this video is a highly accomplished marketer, a former global president at Burger King, CMO at Arby's, and the Adweek's Advertiser of the Decade for the first decade of 2000 AD. Russ Klein is a maverick CPG turnaround specialist and is the man responsible for the world's first really big YouTube viral marketing campaign, the Subservient Chicken, with over 1 billion hits. What he tells is nothing short of commonsensical advice. But then common sense is very uncommon, and we all know that. So I must say that missing out on his sage-like wisdom would be deleterious to your marketing health. And internet is full of people demonstrating that lack of fundamental understanding of how things work. We all know, but we are unaware of the good principles he talks about. In fact, what he has to say goes against everything out there that people are talking about when it comes to viral marketing. Then again, he's not an average marketer, so his words are likely to be different from those of the average marketing people. Chances are that after listening to him, you will make some adjustments in your marketing plan and activities when it comes to viral marketing design. So without much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here is Russ Klein for you.
Russ, welcome to the show, and I appreciate you taking the time out.
Thanks very much for having me.
Wonderful. So you are perhaps one of the first few, if not the first one, who got into viral marketing in a really big way. I mean, what you did has contributed to apparently billions of hits, the Subservient Chicken campaign for Burger King that you launched in 2002. And that was a tremendous success. So,
yes.
So were you the first one, or were you amongst the others that you consider as your peers that time?
Well, we believe we were the first mover. There may have been some other early movers alongside us, but frankly, I couldn't name them for you. I think it's helpful to think about the internet in a little bit of a story form, which is when it was first born. The killer app for the internet was email, and because of the restricted bandwidths, there wasn't a lot of content going on to the web. And as commercial advertisers got involved, their way of exploiting the internet was through banner ads on other people's websites or on search engines. And even today, it's very questionable what the value is of those banner ads and the productivity of click-throughs and so forth. When the bandwidth capacity came along, it allowed for more aggressive content generation among commercial advertisers, and Burger King spotted right away the opportunity to move away from the banner advertising approach to being putting our brand on the web in favor of what we coined as a term, content-generated share of voice. And so we created the microsite called the Subservient Chicken, which was developed to be a catalyst in the launch of our new Tender Crisp chicken sandwich, which went on to become a multi-billion-dollar-a-year annual revenue producer for the company. And the Subservient Chicken was certainly one key element in lighting up the marketplace around that new product introduction. We learned a lot from what could be done through content-generated share of voice for an advertiser as opposed to traditional banner advertising.
Right. I remember that time because I used to be with Avenue A, Razorfish, the guys who were competing with DoubleClick, and I think Atlas DMT it used to be called, which was like, I think these 80%, 90% of all banner ad went through either of these two companies.
Yes.
And I did some projects. I was heading the consulting practice there. And so we would look at the numbers and trying to prove that the banner ads do work, which actually was very tenuous relationship there.
Yes, it's. I think it's dubious. Certainly, it's measurable now, but the question is the quality and the impact. And some people are able to use those banner ads to their advantage in productive ways. But for brand building, it's a little more questionable, and certainly the bandwidth, which then allowed content-generated share of voice strategies to emerge, either through microsites or through viral videos, and so forth. Those really exploded on the scene, and then it was important for us to move into a mode of sharpening up what it took to be effective. Because it's a little bit like drilling for oil when you're doing these viral videos or microsites. Sometimes they hit, often they don't hit. And so there's a return on the investment, based on hitting enough to make it worth your while. And certainly it's important to observe the best practices that are involved in doing a microsite or a video that's going to indeed go viral.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason that I'm talking with you, because if my research is correct, as the president of Burger King's marketing and sales division, at that time Burger King wasn't doing too well. I think it was losing a lot of loyalty. It was like, people knew about Burger King, but there was nothing amusing or nothing interesting about Burger King.
Exactly. Your words are very precise. People knew Burger King more than they loved Burger King. And our job was to remystify the brand and regenerate a curiosity and a love for the brand. And that involved a whole variety of various tactics, but certainly our digital strategies and our content-generated strategies around, first with the subservient chicken, but then, as you may know, later on, about 2 years later, after the success of our on-air ad campaigns, Microsoft approached us to create a suite of 3 games for Xbox that featured the Burger King advertising icons. And we sold several million of those games through our restaurants. And to this day, I believe it's still in the top 5, maybe even the top 3 suites of all Microsoft X game sales, Xbox game sales. So we were very effective in not standing still. We developed that microsite strategy, but we went on to do a whole host of interactive microsites, gaming initiatives like we did with the Xbox suite of games. And it's like anything. You have to keep moving as a brand and keep cutting the front edge.
Yeah, it's where innovation is for marketing, at least. Because no matter what you do, there will be catch up, and then eventually you lose the edge. So you've got to come up with something new, and that's the driving force. As long as you can come up with something new and interesting, and you keep raising the bar. That's what I wanted to understand from you later on. Eventually, is how high can we raise the bar, and especially in viral marketing. You're talking about Burger King subservient campaign. There's also another one that's doing really well these days called the Blend Tech. The blenders, and I don't know exactly the numbers, but I think the viral campaign that they have developed, I think they call it Will It Blend, and they put all kinds of things. They will put an iPhone and blend it in there, or put weird things like a skeleton, not a real one, I guess. I hope not. and those generate massive hits, and so I think their entire marketing strategy is if not say dependent, but at least coincides very closely to the success of these viral marketing campaigns. So that's the shift that has taken place in the last few years from obviously everybody knows from broadcast marketing, we've gone to interactive marketing, but more so now I think viral marketing is pretty much at the center of all marketing, because you can create a broadcast ad and you can shove it onto people. Of course, they can stop it now with the TiVo and everything else. Right. But more importantly, you can spend all the resources you want, but if it doesn't click, because people choose, if they don't like it, there's no way you can shove it down their throats like you could do 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? So
absolutely. The tables have turned. And so, in fact, it's even evolved past content generation from commercial advertiser now to consumer-generated content. Right. And advertisers are having to find ways to take advantage of the consumer's love of creating their own content now. And so you see opportunities, whether it be through Facebook or other forums out there that are attempting to invite content from consumers so that they are playing an active role, and then finding a way for the brand to then cozy up against that is, I think, more intricate, more delicate now than ever, because as you say, you really need to position your brand so that people seek you. It's not a matter of using the old military terms of targeting a consumer and we're going to attack them here and attack them there, and as if they're sort of sitting ducks.
Right.
Now the sitting ducks are the brands, and the consumer's in charge.
You know, it's like, I remember that when you were saying this, the Bruce Lee movie, I don't remember which one, Return of the Dragon or Enter the Dragon, in which this O'Hara fellow hits the board and breaks into pieces, and Bruce Lee says, "Birds don't hit back."
That's right.
In that sense, I guess now, you can't really target because the target could be moving. You don't really know. And the interaction actually generates greater knowledge for you to create things. And that's why, to some extent, which is what I wanted to discuss, is the idea of co-creation of the brand. Not
Yes.
just the content, but idea of co-creation of the brand is actually happening, which means that resource is not the key driver of success. It is entirely possible for a small organization, resource constrained, to be creative and engage with the audience. And like this blend tech, I don't know if they were resource constrained or not, but certainly I think it was a first campaign must have cost them $500 if they really blended the iPhone. So it's not resource constrained. But at the same time, what's happening is the level of expectation from people is going way out of whack. I mean, the bar is quite high. Recently, just a few days ago, I think maybe 2-3 days ago, they had this campaign, it's called a Devil Child Attack or something. I don't know if you saw that. It got 4 million hits in a day.
4 million hits in one day.
One day, first day. And I think it had to do with the movie. I don't know which movie. But the point was, and this was totally contrived, putting a lot of resources by the promoters of the movie. So, and on the other hand, you see Charlie Bit My Finger. And, it's just a home thing that happened. So there's three things going on. There's fluke, there's creativity, and there is a bunch of resources by design put into creating viral marketing. So what I really want to discuss with you and pick on your brains and dip into your knowledge base, your experience, how can we successfully design viral marketing campaigns? Is it even possible? What percentage is fluke? What percentage is possible? Can you predict it? Is it like the old age marketing or something has shifted here?
I think it's not different it's not different from previous marketing disciplines. It's just a whole new set of disciplines and a whole new set of best practices. Just to digress one moment, what you said sparked me to think about the important role that the digital world and the web is playing now in open innovation for companies who literally have done away with their own R&D departments or reduced them to very small skeleton crews in favor of open innovation that literally opens up the world to come to that brand and help develop the better idea, the better sandwich, the better drink, the better mousetrap. And when you have the world all involved, a million garages of innovation going on as opposed to one central conference room somewhere, the odds of coming up with something great are exponentially improved. So I think that goes to your point about how this new environment is really put consumers more in charge of co-creating brands or in some cases creating entirely new products for brands and companies that then are adopted and launched by firms. But
yeah, absolutely. Peer-to-peer innovation, so to speak. And also there are situations like when Netflix launched a campaign, $1 million to, I think, some kind of an algorithm that they wanted to say, if you can do better than the existing algorithm, you get $1 million. And so they've got these hundreds of thousands of people trying to figure it out.
Yes, and hundreds of thousands of people figuring out advertising ideas for various brands, and brands promising to put them on online or even on the air. So yes, the access, the sort of open system idea, which of course Bill Gates was the first guy that really made the right decision about going with an open system, versus a closed system that made their system the operating standard of the world. And I think that the lesson there around opening up your brand and your company and allowing innovation to occur that you're not necessarily in control of is proved to be very effective for
I mean, at that time it must have been a difficult decision because actually I don't know in his case, but for other companies would be a difficult decision because that's your IP. You say, why should I keep it open? It's a tough decision. Now,
exactly.
of course,
it was a decision that Steve Jobs wouldn't make
exactly.
at the time.
Didn't do it. And even now he's was very tight-fisted about things.
Yes.
And of course, those are two different strategies and very different lines of thinking. But everybody is not Steve Jobs.
Yes,
that's
right.
what you should realize. So I think the engagement with people is critical. Having your own evangelists, your own, so to speak, list, because the market research, in a sense, is, of course, it's good to do market research that's very focused and targeted, and it's still being done. But then there is a lot of market research that is happening on a continuous basis.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's important to know what's going on. Keeping a pulse is easier, but at the same time, you've got to keep your fingers on it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Getting back to the question about the formula, and I like to call it the masala movie or masala viral marketing. I don't know if you're familiar with the word masala, but masala comes from the Hollywood movies. Actually, masala is spices.
Yes.
Eat Indian food or curry, it's all masala, which is spices. And Indian movies are often called masala movies. Most of them are Bollywood movies, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they say there are 4 or 5 things that are critical ingredients. You put those in there correctly, chances are you will not fail. Now, you may not be a great hit, great success, but you'll not fail because you follow.
Yes.
So, is there a masala to making a viral video?
I have a masala, but it may be different for other marketers. But I think there are about a half dozen ingredients that do ensure at least an opportunity to be successful in the world of viral marketing, whether it be through microsites or viral videos or any other expression out there. The first one is that it's not about what's possible, it's about what's relevant. There are a lot of things that are possible to do out there, technology-wise, but sometimes developers can get carried away with over-engineering or overbuilding or becoming distracted with something that is not going to be relevant to their commercial business, to their consumer, and importantly to their core consumer, which I'm a big, big believer that every brand begins and ends with its core user as a means for developing strategy. And so first off is to be relevant, to understand who your consumer is, what's important to them, how your product figures into their life, so that when you're developing these tactics in these digital strategies, that you're relevant. If you're not relevant, no one is going to even give you a second look. The second ingredient would be to be purposeful. Again, there's many ways to be entertaining and to be funny and to be dramatic. But there's an old saying in advertising that if you're going to stand a man on his head, you better be selling a product that keeps the change from falling out of his pockets. And the idea, again, there is to be purposeful. The subservient chicken was not just for fun. It was there because it was the personification of having chicken your way. It was about being able to boss around a chicken, and the analogy was that Burger King has now got a new chicken that you can have exactly the way you want it. And so, again, that number 2 ingredient has got to be that you are purposeful with what you're doing, that you're not being gratuitous just to set your hair on fire or to run a bunch of clowns and ponies through the video to get attention, but to do it for a purpose. The third ingredient is to be interactive. The more interactive you can be, the better. The microsites that we had success with the subservient chicken, with the Simpsonize Me, we had a Star Wars game that was digitized that allowed consumer interaction. And of course, the Xbox 360 suite of games were all highly interactive and playable. And I think that if they are one-way videos, they may be watched, but then the pass-along to me is questionable, and they may get watched once and then they're not thought of again. If they're interactive, you have return visits perhaps to that content, and obviously the more engagement, the more time spent with your brand. The next ingredient I would say that's important is to keep it under 3 minutes if it is a video. That's about the time people are willing to spend waiting for commercials to pass on TV. Anything more than that requires engagement or watching more than 3 minutes may suffer from reduced viewership or reduced involvement because of it. The fifth ingredient that I would cite is that, like any effective advertising or any effective entertainment, that it is rooted in tension, that the idea is rooted in some source of tension as to how the product and your consumer figure together. An example I would give you about the importance of tension: when we did the Whopper Freakout campaign, where we removed the Whopper from our restaurants and told people, our core customers, that it was being discontinued, that was based on a tension we discovered in a deprivation study we did, where people who loved the Whopper really struggled to find something else that would replace it if they were deprived of it. And so we knew that was a source of tension for people who loved the Whopper sandwich, and therefore the Whopper Freakout idea was born both online as well as on broadcast. But every great story, every great book, every great movie, and great advertising, if someone hasn't done it with that in mind, I'll bet I can find it for you. I can find for you a source of tension that's been capitalized. People like Snickers have done a great job. You're not yourself when you're hungry. That's a source of tension. And they come to the solution, of course, with the Snickers bar. So I think that's the fifth most important ingredient. And then the last ingredient, number 6, I would say, is the importance of a mobile app or a mobile utility. Because these days, while a lot of digital content involvement is born on laptops or on fixed PCs and MacBooks and so forth, the large majority of activity now is being finished on mobile devices. And so mobile is sort of the point of the spear now because of its proximity for people in location-based strategies, its proximity to retail environments. And so the more mobile utility you can experience through your digital strategies, I think the more likely you will be to convert it to retail behavior.
Now, this is wonderful for multiple reasons. Of course, these 6 points that you've listed, and I'm not going to go specifically one-on-one, but one of the key things I noticed here is that you have stuck to the basics of marketing. Unlike what we hear from others who are talking about viral marketing, let it be highly emotive or let it have a shock value. I mean, those are truly also true. I mean, they're true, but that doesn't solve your problem. I mean, you can have a video that gets 1 million hits a day, but if they happen from China and you're not selling to the Chinese, then you've got a problem. Same way, if you create something extremely shocking, but it happens to generate interest. But okay, so to what end? To what purpose? You might create a degree of awareness maybe for your product by way of having your logo in there or whatever else you do. But I hope awareness is not the only end result. You've got to convert some attitude, change an attitude, and hopefully then change a behavior. But if that's not happening, then what's the point in creating that video? And sometimes we all get
Exactly.
lost in the brouhaha, in the heat of the new technology, new thing. Everybody's, creating all kinds of slogans that you hear of, but basically fundamental people are crying out loud for things that certain thing is done and gone, but the basics still stand. So what I wanted to ask you is, you said purposeful, relevant interaction, under 3 minutes, understandable. Tension, I wanted to dwell a little bit deeper into the idea of tension. Are you saying that there's got to be a degree of emotional connection, such as fear or greed, the things that bind you? Is that what you mean by tension?
Yes, it could be fear. It could be greed. It could be an addiction. It could be a severe problem that someone has. It could be removing spots from your clothing. While it may not be a source of tension for you or me, it is a source of tension for people doing the laundry. And in my case, I do my own laundry, so it is a source of tension for me. But yes, it can be expressed in any number of emotive forms. But it does have to qualify, in my view, as tension. And this is an important part of what we did over our years at Burger King and then my later years with Arby's, is that no creative project began without first developing a brief that identified what the source of tension was between this product, the consumer, and their life.
Okay.
And then once you've identified that, everything else takes care of itself.
In a sense, emotion is not sufficient. You might be emotive about a certain thing, but if you don't have it as a pinpoint, then it doesn't matter. In fact, you won't have an emotional reaction to something that has no connection with you. For example, recently, just very recently, New York Times, I think, had this article on a sculpture, an old one, I think, of a black woman, African-American woman chair. I don't know if you read that one. And a Russian tycoon was sitting on this chair. I think it's very derogatory in many ways, but some people may have a conceptual reaction to it. Yeah, that is derogatory. But if you haven't any understanding, if you don't have any understanding of the race issues, no connection with it. I mean, if you're living in let's say, China, and you don't have, and China, everybody's globally connected now, but in the past, living in a Chinese village, you have no idea. You can say, yeah, conceptually that's a wrong and derogatory thing. But someone who has a deep sense and rooted understanding of the racial issues will have a literally vehement, visceral reaction to it. And I was talking about this with someone that, if you don't understand this, maybe the Russian woman didn't, or some people don't understand, and they say, yeah, it is wrong, but it's okay. It's a piece of art. It's an expression. But no. If you don't understand, think of that woman as someone you know, someone you love, who's a statue that is. You will instantly have the reaction that you need to have. And so what you're saying is, it's not just a emotion, but it has to be a relevant emotion.
Exactly. It has to be a relevant emotion. It isn't always all that emotional, but in other words, tension doesn't have to be highly emotive. It can be. It often is. And also tension, I do a workshop on this. In fact, I'm about to do a workshop next month for Nestle around the importance of identifying tension in a way that is effective. Because some people think, well, just if you produce the opposites, one thing opposite person versus another creates tension, and that's not necessarily the case. The source of tension is anthropologically discovered. By understanding, as you say, the socioeconomic, the political, the world around that person, how your product figures into their lives, how their culture sets up their beliefs and their value systems. And when you know all these things, then you can identify that pinpoint, to use your word, of tension. And when you hit it, it makes the creative development process, digitally or analog, very much easier along the way.
Right. I mean, you talk about anthropology, and they do use anthropologists and also ethnographers and others, especially in the PT cruiser was made that way through an anthropological study, and many products are, but that one comes to my mind. It makes a connection to your past. And so whichever way you have to make connection. And if I look at the current, what I call them snake oil salesman kind of marketing, you see that they use it very effectively. And
oh, yes, they do. A lot of infomercials are very effective at identifying sources of tension. I agree with you, and so you have to give them credit for being good studies of human behavior and of the human mind, because that they are on target so often with their messages, and you see it. I agree. I never go into a new business or a brand experience without hiring an ethnographer and doing a deprivation study right out of the gates. Because if you don't have your core user understood in a three-dimensional way, you probably are not going to be very successful at identifying what's relevant, identifying the source of tension, and all the other important decisions you have to make in a strategy, whether it's digital or not.
And in the current environment, it's relatively easier because if you have a sense, you could create 2 or 3 or multiple microsites, videos, and see how people respond to it. And that way it's so much easier that you don't have to do extensive focus groups and other studies that in the past you had to do. So yes, that's something very good. Now, what about if I look at the videos now, right? I see constantly the bar being raised into the shock value. And the biggest is this shocking video that comes up, this child, it's not a child, but a contraption that looks like a child they've created, and it's the devil child, looks like the devil's child. So it's the child or the robot is in a tram, the stroller, and people are walking by and they say, there's this stroller alone, and then there's a sound coming out like it looks like a child. They go and peek, and then this thing comes up and looks all ugly and yells and screams and even throws up on them. And it's a bunch of videos of people getting shocked. But
yes,
it's ridiculous to some extent. I think people need to understand that this shock value alone will not solve the problem. That's what I hear. If you read books, and I won't name authors, but some well-known professors from Ivy League have written about this topic. And when you read their stuff, it's constantly about the shock value, about the emotive resonance and emotions. But would you say that the numbers alone, and you've said it actually, the numbers alone don't matter. If you have 1 million, that doesn't mean a thing. But let me ask you this question. Unfortunately, unless you have hundreds of thousands of hits, your video will not even come up onto the system, especially on YouTube.
Right. Well, you have to find the right nexus of relevance and purposefulness and be on target with your source of tension, and that should add enough stickiness to your video to be engaging and to be passed along. Now, if you're in the pure entertainment business, you can be shocking and that's it. It's over and out. Shocking, watch me, you're done. That's the person has got, they've achieved what they wanted if you're in the pure entertainment business. But if you're in the business of commercially marketing a product or a business or service, you can't live digitally or otherwise without those 6 ingredients working in your masala.
Okay, so in a way you're saying that while these shocking videos will get you the numbers, you have to balance. But at the same time, you're recognizing that you could make a great video, relevant, sticky, and it may over time get the numbers that you need of the right people. But it's okay, because here's my biggest problem, and I've seen it in my attempts as well, that unless you get a certain kindling temperature, so to speak, certain numbers, you're simply not going to be visible. So you need that seed number. Now, many companies, I don't know what companies do, but I hear this, that companies go out and create fake hits to get their numbers jacked up. There are YouTube suppliers to get 1 million hits for X amount of money.
Right.
Have you heard anything of that sort?
I have heard about that. I've never would never approve anything like that. I think your authenticity is a very important credential for a brand. And if your consumer finds out that you're pumping the numbers by using some software program to create artificial hits, to create the image that it's popular, your brand would be dead, in my opinion. I think if someone finds out. So to me, the risk of doing that is so high because this consumer is not a forgiving consumer for brands that lie or deceive. So I think authenticity is an important watchword when doing these things. It's important to understand why pass along or word of mouth happens. We coined a term back in 2003, and I did a speech to the ANA at the time, the Association of National Advertisers, on a term we coined called social currency. And it gets used a lot now, but we introduced that notion at that keynote speech. And social currency is about the power of Metcalfe's law, which is the law of utilities. Why one telephone is not worth anything, but 1,000,000 telephones make your one telephone worth a lot more. And the more telephones there are, the more valuable your telephone is. And it's that same Metcalfe's law that powers social currency and word of mouth. Because when I pass along something to someone, it's like giving someone a scoop on a new restaurant, to be the first to say, hey, have you tried this new restaurant? Or have you seen this new movie? The did you see that factor that people who are watching late night TV shows and say, hey, I saw your brand on Jay Leno last night, because of the word of mouth pass along. The power of passing along information means that the more popular it becomes, the more socially valuable it becomes to to every person who's involved in it, because it creates a connection between people, which people starve for. And so this is the mathematical model behind social currency and word of mouth and pass along on viral videos. It's the same dynamic, only it's a softer, squishier one to try to articulate, because it's about being talked about rather than the actual power of a connection on a network of telephones.
Right. And it also means, I suppose, that one shouldn't look at a single, the viral marketing as an event or as a video. Viral marketing is a process, because you essentially create your loyal base of clients, customers, brand lovers, or whatever you call them, but you create an audience, and that audience starts expecting things from you, and you need to engage them. And so it's not a single video that can hit multi-million hits. Even if a video fails, you are at least, as a brand, connecting. So viral marketing is not just creating a video.
Exactly. It is a journey. We used a process with Crispin Porter Bogusky called no dead end, which means, to never let an activity die. Always make an activity lead to another activity for the consumer to stay in touch. And it's a journey for a brand so that there is no dead end in that activity, that relationship. And, a lot of the power of what goes on around viral marketing doesn't just happen through hits. It happens in conversations off the grid between people at bars or people who are seeing something on the Tonight Show. And so there's a whole other level of communication that can be generated that is not being measured from the power of good viral marketing.
Right, and it fundamentally doesn't change the original principles anyway. When the broadcast media was the king, at that time also, you created ads that were talked about. You remember the Lexus 400, SC400 ad back in the 90s, late 90s? It was all in French. Most people wouldn't understand what it said, but it created a buzz. And if that ad had been done now, it probably would have gone viral. So viral is simply changing in a mechanism in an environment, but people need to be cognizant of the fundamental principles of marketing at all times while doing this. They shouldn't change. Well, I appreciate this a whole lot, Russ. I enjoyed the conversation. Great information. And while I wasn't really expecting you to talk about, the basics, but it is great that you did, because that is what people need to know. Shock value is something, it's not easy to create, but I think, it's not that hard to create, as we can see amongst the videos now, including Miley Cyrus, the wrecking ball. That's not so hard, and I hope it stops somewhere. But thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'll look forward to the finished product.
Yeah, most certainly. This has helped us conclude, but I would like to see if we can discuss some more. Maybe something additional will come in doing this. The concept of interruptive marketing versus integrated marketing. What we had in the past was an interrupting marketing. It was interrupt your activity, whatever you were doing, and shove it down the throat. Now it's integrated with the consumer, so we are constantly engaging with them. This requires tremendous amount of resources. I mean, for new companies or B2B companies, this is too much work. You've got to have a lot of resources to be able to do this, because it's not easy doing marketing nowadays compared to what was in the past. Is that true?
I think maybe the skill sets are different. I don't know. I hate to make a case for increased headcount, because you have to watch that. But when you're building out a team, you have to be make sure you've got the right amount of resources, but no more than you need. And I think it's important to have people on your team that are fluent in digital strategies, which unfortunately, for the most part means younger people, and you still need experience on your team. And as I said, I think that our discussion earlier about the access to consumers as resources in the example of an open innovation system like we used at Arby's can actually allow you to reduce some internal resources in favor of putting it in the hands of open innovation partners, whether they're suppliers or consumers, other vendors, strategic alliances. There are all kinds of ways you can team up with people outside of your own resources to support open innovation. And because innovation is usually the most important activity going on in a company, I'm not sure that it necessarily means then that a company has to have more resources. I think there are new ways to harness the resources around open innovation. But a company that doesn't have a staff of savvy digital strategists who know what digital marketing is all about, who know what's possible, who know what's relevant, you need your traditional consumer insights person, and you need your traditional hard analytics person, the big data person. You need both of those still today. So I don't know. As I look at a marketing organization today versus 15 years ago, it's not terribly different, and it's not necessarily larger, but it might have a different combination of people. I tend to favor consumer insights, big data heavy analytics resources, an open innovation system, a digital team that's fluent in the business, and then a brand management system and a group that can be the tastemakers for the brand in terms of advertising development, media strategies, and so forth. And I think that recipe hasn't changed dramatically, but it has changed versus 15 years ago.
So, and this is very good to know, because generally we think in terms of, well, there's complexity, there's the need for these specialized digital tools. You need to understand Eloqua, you need to understand Marketo, you need to understand the technical side of marketing, which wasn't there before. And then, of course, you need to know the brand. So there's additional resource requirement, but I can see where you're coming from when you say peer-to-peer or your direct interaction with your own audience also helps you solve a lot of problems that otherwise you would have to put in resources into. But does it also mean that these digital talents, for example, do they have a different mindset, or can you retrain your so-called older talent, who the kind of talent that has been good with marketing principles and good marketers, you and I included? Can we learn the mindset of digital marketing?
Sure, we can learn. It takes a dedication. It takes an immersion process to be fluent in all things digital. It's difficult to compete with someone who has grown up so intuitively with the digital tools, gaming, and so forth, that the younger generation is bringing into organizations now. So I think it's important. It's our responsibility to become trained and become conversant and knowledgeable. But I don't know that we'll ever, unless you have a special knack for it, I don't know that we're ever going to have the sort of nuances and the penetrating insights that I might rely on a new generation of people who've grown up in this world to handle instead.
Right. I suppose our operating systems were written, and you can't just reprogram it and redo it. Tabula rasa doesn't exist. Those guys grew up, and I've got 3 children, and anyone with children knows how exactly it is. For me, if I like a book on Kindle, I want to buy it physically because it just doesn't work for me to have only on Kindle. So I understand. Last question: B2B viral marketing or B2B marketing. How do you see? And I know you mostly worked in the consumer side, so it will be hypothetical for you, but you probably have a lot of insights now. If you were put in a B2B situation, marketing for IBM or not Dell is still consumer, but or a strategy consulting firm, the whole landscape changes. Have you ever thought about how might you do that? Because you can't make videos go viral for. Actually, you could. I don't know. I'm still thinking and contemplating. Maybe McKinsey could make a viral video for McKinsey, or Goldman Sachs.
Yes. Well, B2B organizations have intranets so that their customers can be the only ones who access them. So, and sometimes you can create things for your customer's customer that help you with your relationship with your customer. So I think the world of B2B is not that foreign. I have thought about it because my very, very first job was with an advertising agency who had more B2B business than it did consumer business, even though I happened to work on the consumer business. And from my observations, I think you're still talking about human beings who have to make important decisions and their preference for your offering versus a competitor's offering go through all the same kinds of decision making that a consumer makes going down the grocery aisle or making a service decision. So I think the importance of these disciplines that we talked about earlier apply for a B2B manager. And I think if anything, the world may be bigger for a B2B marketer because I can not only have a targeted sense of who my important customers are, and I can create the important relationships with them, but I can also use my consumer, or I should say their consumer, to my advantage if I understand that consumer as well. So I wouldn't, if someone threw me into a B2B situation tomorrow, I wouldn't think it to be much different.
Okay. So you would say that you still need to focus on why would they want to share, why would they want to talk about it, and if that's their life, which it is their work, so part of it at least. So yes. Then they have reasons to communicate. Now you've got to make it worthwhile for them that they will share a piece of content with their peers, because right now the content is so much and so much is garbage that it's easy to get lost. So if you can create quality content, you're saying that give them an incentive to share, and it may not acquire the millions of hits or even hundreds of thousands, but the relevant 1,000 people are still relevant. I mean, if your audience is Fortune 500 companies, still because of Fortune 500 companies, CIOs, then your audience is only 500 people.
Absolutely, and particularly if you can, again, if you can activate the marketplace on behalf of your brand to your customer. FedEx to me is a good example of someone who, yes, they are dominantly a B2B business, and most of their communication is centered on purchasing agents in the shipping room, right? And yet, as consumers, we see that, and we all know about absolutely positively overnight, Federal Express. And so I think that obviously is an example of someone who is in both B2B and B2C. And there are some people who are really only in B2B who use trade magazines and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I'm familiar with that universe as well. And I think the concepts are the same. I really don't think they're any different. And if anything, as I say, I think that the oyster may be bigger because you have the chance to work both their consumer and them as your customer.
So if I may to summarize this, YouTube is not the right way to judge the success of your campaign because you're comparing apples to oranges. But the concept of viral marketing is still relevant because whichever way your audience is receiving it, just the same way they could share it with the relevant people.
I would agree.